Hello guys and welcome back. Got a bit of a rush on this evening. So if you watched last week's video, you'll know that I ended up at a location and I really liked the image, I really liked the composition. However, the light wasn't playing ball. It was very, very overcast. So today I'm returning with the hope of getting better light and hopefully recapturing that image. And if I do get better light, we're going to take the image right into the edit, go through the edit, and hopefully, ooh, windy, hopefully, if the light's really good, we might even make a print. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I've got to get a wiggle on because the light's dipping down behind this headland behind me here, and I might only have a few minutes to get set up and make this composition. Maybe should have arrived a little bit earlier. Anyway, see you at the location. So we are set up here looking over this cliff edge down into this wonderful cove. We've got some amazing light hitting the headland here and these wonderful outcrops of rock here that just jut out of the sea. Absolutely beautiful, and the light makes this image. So many things have to come together, have to combine to make this shot work. We've got the gorse bush, which is our foreground interest, and that really limits us to this time of year. I think I really want to incorporate that in the shot. Behind me here, we've got this big outcrop here, a higher cliff edge, which blocks a lot of the light out where the sun is now, but we are getting some light on the tops of these cliff edges. But yeah, we haven't got any down here on the gorse bush, but it's so bright, I think that isn't too much of a problem. It looks absolutely beautiful. I do have some problems though, and that is the wind this time. Last time we had overcast still conditions. This time we've got wind, and the wind is moving these bushes in the foreground, which is making it a bit of a challenge. What I've got to do is boost my ISO to ISO 400, and that gives me a 50th of a second, and that keeps some of these bushes sharp, I think. It's difficult to tell, sometimes they're moving more than others, but you know, for the most part they do look sharp when I'm reviewing them on the back of the camera. So maybe last week actually the tide was better, the wind was better, but we had the overcast conditions. Sometimes you just can't get everything to work for you, can you? But I think the light's better, and without light really the scene looked flat, so that's something. So I am going to take the shot. Now another issue with this shot, because I'm very, very close to this ivy type bush, that's right in the corner of the frame. So I'm going to need to focus stack this image. So I decided to focus stack. I'm about a metre, just to give you an idea, about a metre or so away from this the bush here on the left hand side. Just hope the wind is not going to be too much of a nuisance. So yeah, a combination of shots. So I'm going to quickly grab this shot before the light dips down behind the horizon. So what I'm going to do is, I can't really show you because I'm having to handhold this because there's nowhere to perch the tripod. But basically, I'm going to take a shot focused on the far distance, on the gorse bush, and then two down here. 2 second timers on, 50th second, f11, ISO 400 for this shot. Grab these images, and then I'm going to wait to see if anything happens in the sky. And if it does, I'm going to take a shot of the sky a little bit later on, and then that might give me the option of blending a bit more of an interesting sky in with this shot as well. So it could be quite a complicated edit. So yes, please join me back in my office where we'll run through the edit in Lightroom and Photoshop and see if it's a print-worthy image. So back in the office now, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch this channel. Something I've been thinking about recently is what you guys want to see more of on this channel. So I'm just wondering if you can hit me up in the comments and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this channel. As you know, I absolutely love being out with the camera doing these on location vlogs, but if you'd like to see more editing or maybe some more gear or tips type videos, please let me know what you would prefer to see the most of on this channel. Yeah, great to see your comments down there. So here we are in Lightroom, and we've got 3 photos that we're going to merge together. As we spoke about in the field I needed to focus stack this image to make it work. The bushes in the very near foreground are soft if we just focus on the background. So I've actually done this with two images. One image which you can see here, which is focused on the gorse bush, which allows everything from just in front of the gorse bush just here to the far background to be in focus. And then the next image I've got is essentially just this very, very near foreground. If we zoom into that, you can see how quickly the focus falls off once we get back here. We're very, very soft. So this image number 2 is really just this part here, which we probably will crop a little bit out of a bit further into the edit. And then my final image, which was the actual sunset a little bit later on. Now, as we mentioned in the field, the first 2 images were taken at ISO 400 because the bushes and stuff were moving around and I needed to obtain a quicker shutter speed, 50th of a second, just to be able to freeze the motion in those. But later on, the landscape side of things, the hill here and the bushes, I wasn't really recording the data in those, so I actually dropped my ISO back down to 160, which enabled me to capture the image of the sky and the sea at ISO 160, so a cleaner image. So as the evening progressed, the tide receded somewhat and exposed this golden strip of sand, which is what I was after actually. So that worked out quite well. And the sky, there was some beautiful, although it's not a really dramatic sky, there was some beautiful pastel colours in the sky. So I was actually quite pleased. It's very subtle, but it's still quite nice. So essentially what we're going to do is blend the 2 focus stacked images together and then add in the sky and the sea and beach area that we took a little bit later. Now, I enjoy taking photos when I'm out in the field and getting things right in camera, but sometimes it's quite nice to be able to paint light into an image. And I think blending a series of images over a period of an hour or so, I'm fine with that. But what I do like to do is tell people about that. So if I posted this final image on Instagram, I would probably say in the writing there that this was a blend of 3 images taken over a period of an hour or so, you know. So just to make sure people are aware that it is a combination of multiple photos. I don't really like the idea of pulling the wool over people's eyes. I think if you do these kind of edits, it's great if you just tell people and let them know. But that's just my thoughts. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus stack this image and blend in the sky. Well, essentially we're going to be painting back in this the hillside here. So to keep this video at a watchable view time, I'm just going to tell you essentially what I've done in terms of the basic edits here in Lightroom. So on image 1, we've just run through a very few basic edits. So it's just as you would normally edit a photograph. We've boosted the exposure by +50. I've boosted the contrast overall by +18. Boosted the highlights by +10. Boosted or opened up the shadows to +81, that's lifted the shadows up, and boosted the whites up to +22 and added it in a little bit of saturation to +5, and in the HSL I've just boosted the orange and yellows just to bring out the details in this gorse bush here. If I hit / on the keyboard, it's going to show you the unedited version, so quite dark and yeah, a raw file essentially. So we've gone from that to that, which is a much more pleasing exposure and overall looks a lot more balanced. So the second image, because this is the focus stacked image, I just literally copy and pasted those settings into this file by clicking the previous button here. That just copies the previous settings. Basically what we're going to do now is take these images. I'm not going to crop them or anything else. I'm going to take these images into Photoshop and blend them together, and then we're going to come back to Lightroom and maybe do a few tweaks, crop the images. I always think it's better to crop the images after you've done all your Photoshop edits, because you take that file back into Lightroom, and then if you want to do any further cropping in the future, you can always go back to the original dimensions and crop from there. When I'm taking my images from Lightroom into Photoshop, I always take the sharpening off. As you can see, take the sharpening off here. That would be the default. I always take it off. That enables me to have a completely unsharpened file and then to do my sharpening in Photoshop. So to open these files in Photoshop, I'm just going to highlight them all by clicking on that image there and then holding Shift, clicking on the first image that highlights them all. I'm going to right click and then I'm going to click Edit in, Open as Layers in Photoshop. And that's going to open all of those 3 images as layers in Photoshop. As you can see, they're just coming in. Now I did take these images into Photoshop a little while ago just to see how they merge together as layers. Now I would always recommend aligning layers. What I'd normally do would be to highlight all of these layers here, come up to Edit and then come up to Auto Align Layers and click that. Now what I found with this image is that because the bushes had moved in between my shots with the wind, it wasn't aligning the images through Auto Align Layers. It actually made the alignment worse. So I actually avoided using Auto Align Layers. So I managed to get a fairly sturdy position with my tripod. So we're not going to use Auto Align Layers, but normally I recommend that you do that first just to make sure everything aligns in case there was any movement. So it's from here now we're going to blend these images together. So we've got, if I just turn these 2 off, we've got our sunset image here at the end, the very final image here at the end. And then we've got our stacked images here. So first of all, I am going to add a layer mask to this one, and I'm going to press Control and I on the mask itself to invert the mask, turn it black. And then I'm going to do exactly the same with the one above it, press Control and I to make the mask black. Now, essentially that is now showing us our bottom layer. Click on the mask there. I'm going to paint in this area of bushes, which is our nearest foreground element. I'm going to make sure white is selected and click on my brush and make sure my opacity is to 100%. And then I'm going to bring down the feathering of my brush. If you hold down Shift, you can use the bracket keys to make the feathering less or more essentially. So somewhere around there. And you can see that is just painting that sharp area into the image there. So now I've got my, as you can see on the mask here, so painted this area into the image, which is our sharp foreground. Now I'm going to come up to the next layer. Now what I'm going to do is paint in this wonderful light into the rocky outcrop here. So again, I'm just going to paint over the mask, being a little bit wary of where I'm painting. See this light coming into the shot now. Now I'm just going to, I'm going to be fairly rough with this actually, because I'm going to probably paint. Sometimes it's easier to paint back in where you've gone, if that makes sense. Right, okay. Let's zoom in a little bit. Sometimes it's easier to change your brush over to black and then paint away what you've already done. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not. Now, depending on how, you can see my sea is quite different here. Obviously the light was a lot different, but depending on how close you've got things, or depending on how easy it will be to paint in or paint back in the original exposure, if you like. That was fairly simple through there, but it would be more difficult here, you see, because the land on the original shot is a lot darker. So just press X again. You've got to be very careful, because if you make this look too obvious, you know, people can really tell. Like if you start painting in black bushes here, there and everywhere, it's clear, isn't it, what you've done. I'm going to come back to that bush in a minute. Reduce that. Actually, it doesn't look too bad, but what I'm actually going to do is just feather that in a little bit. So I'm going to reduce my opacity down to about 23. Change my brush back over again, and increase the feathering on my brush. So I've got a very soft brush, and now I'm just going to sort of paint over this just to sort of blend those areas in, something like that, just to soften that between the dark and the light. Something like that looks fairly good, I think. So that was a really quick way of painting these layers, and you can see exactly what you've done here on your layer masks. So, you know, this is a very quick way of doing it. You can be more precise, obviously. We don't have time to be super precise when we're doing videos like this, but yeah, it's pretty good. So I'm just going to go and flatten this image now. I'm just going to come up to layers and flatten the image down, just so I've got one layer here. We're going to do a little bit of cleanup work on this now, remove dust spots, take this rope out of the equation as well, because I don't really want to see this rope down here. So I'm going to grab my spot removal tool and see if we can deal with that. It's a bit of a tricky one. Hopefully it'll be all right. Yeah, that's done a good job. Maybe see if we can get rid of that as well. Oh yeah. Always amazes me, the spot removal tool in Photoshop is absolutely brilliant. And then coming up here, try and get rid of this dust spot. Come to filter, sharpen, unsharp mask, and generally speaking with unsharp mask, I'm looking at, for a photo of this resolution, I'm looking at around 150 with a radius of 1 pixels. Any more than that, we start to see the dreaded worming coming into play, but that looks great. I'm happy with that. And now it's time to take this bad boy back into Lightroom, do a few tweaks, and then we'll have it finished. So again, just flatten our image, and I'm going to click save this time, not save as, save, and that's going to take the image back into Lightroom. Okay, so this is the edited TIFF file. I always like to label my images, and this one's going to be red now because this is my TIFF file. So all of my working files, especially if I'm working on multiple files, will all be yellow, and then when I take an image to Photoshop and bring it back into Lightroom, I always highlight it red, and then I know that's my finished image. A few little tweaks I think's needed to this now just to finish it off. Overall, I think it doesn't look too bad. Might just want to boost the exposure slightly, maybe add in a little bit more contrast, and maybe just, I was thinking about boosting the purples in this shot a little bit, just to bring out the detail there, not too much, just a little bit. And maybe just bring in these yellows a little bit more, not too much, something like that. Maybe just to boost these greens a bit, just to give it a bit more of a punch in the greens. That looks nice. So by the way, I'm just using the picker here, so clicking on the picker and then clicking on the color I want to change, and then dragging it up and down, and then that drags those sliders over. Right, next up, quick crop, I think. So I always wanted to crop this a little bit either side, just to draw the eye a little bit further into the scene. Crop out some of this nothing area, and maybe just check my horizon level is straight. Maybe arch it over a bit more, something like that. So we've got the gorse bush in the left third, and this rock there or thereabouts in that third. And I think we are there. So guys, there we have it, the finished image. Do hope you enjoyed this week's video. Hope you got something from it. Please be sure to drop a comment below and let me know what content you'd like to see more of from this channel. Also, we'll be back out again in a couple of weeks doing some more landscape photography, so please be sure to join us then. If you fancy checking out my online photography club, please be sure to follow the link in the description and above. And also check out the Photographers Clubhouse monthly challenge from March, which was seascapes. The 10 images will be coming up shortly. Okay guys, that's all for now. Take care, and I'll see you soon.